Welcome to Prepper Nation. I am John. Thank you very much for being here, for watching the videos or listening, however you choose to do it, son, for liking the video and helping the next person behind you find the platform. And thank you for subscribing to the channel. It's truly appreciated. Also, Robert R., thank you for sponsoring the coffee this morning. Appreciate that, brother. So I'm going to get right into it, but just I feel like there are probably a few of you out there that are loaded for bear, ready for the zombies today, because today's the day. So if I'm totally wrong and we have the zombie apocalypse, if you see me out on the road, holler at me. Let's link up. Us beaver rings, we'll link up and take them out. So this morning, I want to talk about the silent depression. This comes from a great article over at Ask a Prepper, in case you're interested online. Um, and they were talking about the silent depression versus a Great Depression. What are the differences? Because several years back, at least two that I'm aware of, I'd said, "Hey, it looks like America's heading into a Great Depression." I was looking at a lot of the indicators, a lot of the numbers. The one thing I remember from that video, if you've been here for a while, maybe you remember this, but they were saying there was economist on there in the video that I'd watched, and he said, "You know what? The working class man is no longer buying new underwear." I'm not kidding on that, by the way. And the economist predicted the recession of 2008 based on the same indicator. People thought he was nuts. He said, "Look, when the working class man is no longer buying new underwear and he is using what he has, that is a very bad sign that the average American household is hurting for money." And I get it. Not every household has a guy working. Maybe you're a single mom or something. Hopefully you're buying new underwear. But I digress this morning. The indicators are there, and that's what this article is breaking down. And I get it. I get these comments a lot. Son, you need to stop. We're not in a Great Depression. Stop with the gloom and doom. But I'm here to argue this morning, alongside this article, that we are, in fact, in a depression. This article goes to great lengths to say this is not a recession. Okay. This is not like the Great Recession of 2008, because when that was taking place, people understood, the average American understood, okay, we're in a recession. The government came out and said, we're in a recession. We're sending out, I forget how much they were, but they sent out stimulus checks and things like that to every household to help people get through the recession, because they were admitting, hey, we are in a recession. So, what the silent depression means, according to this article, and I'm inclined to agree, is that America is already in a Great Depression, but it will never be admitted to by the federal government, because, as I was saying 2 years ago, okay, I don't always get it right, but I think I got it right on this, folks. It's self-inflicted. We're doing stupid stuff that is gonna cost us in the long run. I can remember talking about the pandemic, how much economic damage we were doing because things were shutting down. I mean, the level of lunacy during, the beginning stages of the pandemic, when we were shutting down, we're not taking imports from this country or this country or this country. If one farmhand gets sick, the government was stepping in, shutting down the entire farm. I mean, all kinds of stuff was being shut down that really impacted the economy. And I think that it's caught up to us now. And it's still being inflicted, not on the back of the pandemic, but now it's, of course, going green, the obsession with climate change and stuff like that. But here is the stuff that the article goes through, and I've added a couple on my own. Americans are losing jobs at an alarming rate. Not illegals, all right? In these sanctuary cities and things, jobs are being created out of thin air in order to help these illegals, right? the ones that are willing to work, and some of them are Americans who had a job a few years ago are now finding themselves without a job, again, at an alarming rate that we can't continue, down that road. Almost 600,000 Americans are now homeless. It's not a new issue in this country, but a lot of people from the beginning of the pandemic till now have found themselves homeless, or houseless, as it's being called by some circles now. People are struggling just to pay the rent. So the average universally, if you're renting a home or you're renting a decent sized apartment, not a studio apartment, the national average for that is $2,000 a month. That's a lot of money for the average American family right now that's having to deal with all of the other stuff, the inflation, the taxes going up, the cost of heating homes, the food inflation and stuff. The housing market, people that are looking into buying homes did this at the beginning of the pandemic. The housing market is crashing in case you haven't heard that lately. It has taken a nosedive. Food is now a primary expense for the American household. Getting back into food inflation for a second, right? So it used to be that your biggest bills were prior to the pandemic, 2018 and back. Used to be your biggest bills were your rent or your mortgage, car payment, maybe, insurance across the board and stuff. But again, all of that's went up. But food inflation has gotten so bad now that it's considered one of the primary costs of an American household, and that's a huge issue. Um, the average new car, this blew my mind because I'm not really into the new cars. I like the pre-owned stuff because 'cause I'm cheap. I've always been cheap, but the average new car now in America costs $47,000. I'm sorry, but who has that kind of money sitting around? I'm sure there's some, but not a lot of people have that kind of money sitting around in the bank right now or sitting around at home right now, which means most people are having to go out and get loans to get these cars, putting themselves further behind the 8 ball, or they're jumping on the pre-owned market. And so many people have jumped on the pre-owned vehicle market now that pre-owned vehicles, the price of those have skyrocketed as well. And you can tack on an additional $10,000 per vehicle if you're talking about an electric vehicle, which they're pushing everybody towards. So not only is it very expensive to own a new vehicle, but the fact that they are worried about climate change and that's the new boogeyman is making things even more expensive. And the cost, let me just say the cost of replacing things on these EVs, the batteries in particular, it's a total nightmare. I added this because I've seen this and I know this is an indicator of a Great Depression. We know people now in the community that are having, I'm going to call them community birthday parties, but these are birthday parties for kids where they are celebrating two or three birthdays at one time, two or three kids at one time, just because the cost is cheaper. People are able to go in, split the cost of birthday parties. And again, this is very indicative of a Great Depression. There was a lot of this happening during the first Great Depression. The working class is also passing on new clothes, not just underwear, but new clothes in general. The sales of new clothes are way down. Now, you're going to have your age groups and your demographics that are more affected than others. You've still got a lot of the younger people that are buying expensive tennis shoes and expensive clothes, but they live at home by and large. Not all of them, but a lot of them live at home and they don't have that additional overhead. Whereas the average working class family, they have too much overhead. They can't afford to buy a lot of new stuff right now, clothes wise. Um, Many have sought a second salary, and we all know people that have done this. Probably some people in chat have done this. Okay. You're working a full time job, you were making decent money according to 2018 standards. but prices of things have gotten so out of control that you've had to take on a second job, maybe to pay for your insurance, or a second job just to make the grocery bill make sense, or a second job just to pay for gas to get back and forth to both jobs, whatever the case may be. Um, Americans are unretiring. And my wife works in education, and we're seeing this in our own school system. Teachers who are retired typically would work as a substitute teacher a couple of days a week because that allows them to keep their insurance through the school system. But now they are unretiring completely and they're coming back to work. And they've been retired for, 5, 6 years. And again, it's because they can't afford everything else, right? They can't afford the grocery bills anymore. Medications, especially. I mean, even if you have insurance, the copays on medication and tests that are run at doctors and stuff, they're a problem for the working class. Again, you're here illegally, it's all free, right? You're freeloading the system. But the working class, the retired, the folks that spent 40 years plus at a job and retired and thought they had enough money, thought they had decent insurance because of the inflation on everything now. Thank you, Joe Biden, for that, by the way. They'll say the president's not responsible for inflation, but he asked for the job. He's numero uno when, whether he's pooping his pants or not, right? He's numero uno. He's the top dog. He's the one that could change this if he truly wanted to. So thank you, Joe Biden. And finally, our entire structure is built around credit. It's built around this idea that the American dream involves a house, it involves the picket fence, it involves, what is it, 2.5 kids, 1.5 pets, and all of this stuff. Um, in an ideal situation, one person is the homemaker, one person is the 9 to 5 worker 5 days a week. That American dream died a long time ago, and we became a nation of people that survive on credit. And this has been an issue for a while, for decades, okay? But it became increasingly bad throughout the pandemic because people were at home. They were not working, out of fear of the COVID maybe, or maybe their workplace just wasn't working in person. Maybe they had hours cut and they survived on credit. Well, now that bill is coming due and people can't afford it, in many cases. So enter the silent depression. Financial experts from around the world, not YouTubers sitting here in a badly constructed outfit. The Canadian tuxedo, somebody called it last week. I'd never heard it called that. But actual financial experts, they agree right now that the global economy is toast and that it's just a matter of time before this thing falls like a house of cards. You can prop it up, you can print more money, which is what the US has done, but down the road, you're just kicking the can down the road and you're making the problem worse because now you have more money floating around with absolutely nothing behind it, right? Um, Numbers wise, we're already in a Great Depression. And, I said this 2 years ago. 2 years ago, again, I said we're entering a Great Depression. It's unavoidable. We're in one now, I would argue. But because politicians in our government refuse to acknowledge that we are in a Great Depression, it's kind of like we're we're at war with Russia via Ukraine, but we've not officially announced, hey, we're at war with Russia. Still looks the same. We're still stacking assets and things on the border, troops on the border. We're still funding the war. Everything else looks the same, but it's not technically a war that we're involved in, right? Because it's not been officially announced. Same problem here with our politicians. They have not come out. And Joe Biden is never going to look into that camera and say, folks, strap in. We're in a Great Depression because there's too much political damage at that point. He may not be reelected, he may not be reselected. Plus the thieves at the WEF, the WEF as we call them here, they don't want you to know what they've done to you on purpose. They want to continue to gaslight people. Bankers don't want you to know that they've stolen your wealth. They want to continue the charade. So rather than a Great Depression, we have a silent depression. Same thing, looks the same. It's just under a different moniker. So, what can we do about it? 7 things from this article. Is a great article. Number 1, understand the government is in denial and we're basically on our own. All right. So, for the folks out there that are waiting on the government to swing in like Tarzan and rescue you, it's not going to happen. I think that also happened with Luke Skywalker on Star Wars. All right. It's not happening. If you got that Princess Leia syndrome and you're waiting on Luke to swoop in and get you, the government's not going to do that. You know, yeah, they're not above printing more money, but it's not going to end up in your pocket. You're not going to get this money. Illegals are going to get this money. They're already getting the money. All right. You're on your own. Sooner you come to terms with that, the better. All right. Number 2, become as self sufficient as possible, less of a consumer, more of a producer. All right. Now, I'm not totally self sufficient. This is probably made in China. I don't know. It's from Rural King, both of them. Tell y'all straight up. So it's probably from China. I didn't stitch this fine clothing together. All right. I didn't stitch my socks last night and put them on this morning. I'm not on here trying to gaslight anybody. I'm a consumer as well. I still buy things, but produce things, right? Or at the very least, establish a network where you can barter for things from producers like farmers. All right. Try and get that in place. Stack what you can afford to stack is number 3 and grow the rest. There you go, Milton. I threw you a bone. Milton's always in here saying grow food. Absolutely. Stack what you can afford to stack realistically at some point with food costs and things, especially for the picky eaters out there. It's just cheaper to grow it. It's time consuming. It can be. Um, I'm not Farmer John over here, but we grow some things and we can some things. Number 4, become less dependent on the fiat currency, which makes sense. I like that they mentioned this in the article because the fiat currency is a lie to begin with, but debt is debt. Okay, so if you owe a bunch of money out, it's not just going to go away. If you're a landowner, congratulations, you've done it. But if you don't pay those taxes every year, you're not going to be a landowner for much longer. They're going to seize your assets. This is how it works. So, again, become less dependent on fiat currency, but you're going to need it to some extent. Okay. Number 5, these are 4 groups of people that made it okay during the first Great Depression. And if you can find yourself falling into one of these 4 categories, you'll be okay, I think, as long as you're level-headed. Small farmers. Small farmers made it okay. Now, they didn't have the WEF stepping in and, regulating them to the grave. A lot of small farmers have walked away because of the nonsense and the go green nonsense, and I would argue this morning that's part of the climate nonsense, is they're trying to eliminate small farmers. But if you're still in that game and you're still doing your thing, you should be okay. Uh, Homesteaders, if you're full blown homesteader, you should be okay. All right. Takes a while to get there. It's not for everybody. But look, if you fall into that category, homesteaders typically make it through to the other end of a Great Depression. The financially mature. Again, don't go out and get an $80,000 vehicle that you don't need. You know, don't recklessly spend money. And by all means, do not recklessly spend money that you don't even have and use credit to do this, all right? And the fourth group is those who repurpose things. Some of the smartest people that you will ever meet do not have a college degree. Why? Because they either lived through the Great Depression and they learned to repurpose items so they're not consuming over and over and over, or they had people in their family teach them and they listened and they learned how to repurpose things in that way. Number six, learn to eat cheap. We talked about this a few days ago. Learn to eat outside of the box a little bit. Key in on your cheaper foods and lower the cost of each meal. Hey, we all like nice pasta sometimes, chicken parmesan, right? But not every night. It's not financially responsible, especially if you're eating out, right? Barter when possible. Yard sales, flea markets, pawn shops, swap meets, people that that have something that you desire. A dairy farmer, hey, I desire some of the milk that you have. What can we work out? Can I cut some firewood for you? This sort of thing. And don't trust banks with your money. This was a huge mistake during the Great Depression. People thought, man, I put my money in the bank and it just stays there. It just squats like an illegal in Portland. It just squats. It just sits there. No, it does not just squat. They slap the FDIC logo on the window and you think your money is safe in a bank. No. Number one, they will back up to $100,000. Sounds great. But they also give themselves 100 years to pay your money back. Your money's not safe in a bank, especially in times like this. And finally, number seven, a necessary trade skill equals extra income or bartering power on your part. Getting back to the firewood for a second. People look down on people that cut firewood. I don't. It's a necessary skill. There are people out there that have things you want that physically cannot cut their own firewood. You can trade it. There are trees all over the place. You can harvest the wood, stack it for them, and get something in return with just a little sweat equity and, however much gas it took for the chainsaws and to get it there in a truck. You know what I'm saying? You can make deals in that way. Any necessary skill, you know, can become an additional income. If you know plumbing, you're certified in plumbing or you're just really good at it and you're willing to do it at a reasonable price, people will find you. People that need plumbing in your community will find you and they will pay you. And this is extra income. You may not be getting top pay for it compared to a huge company, but it's extra income. This will help you survive through a Great Depression. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments because we always do the rundown in the afternoons, right? And again, if you're strapped up and you're waiting on zombies and I'm wrong, maybe I'll see you out there. Y'all take care. God bless.